All right, hi everyone. I'm so glad you could join us today for our next Tribe Transition webinar. My name is Taylor Slavin, and I am the Assistant Director of Family Engagement here at William & Mary. Today we'll be talking all about course registration processes and academic advising opportunities. I know registration will be here before we know it, and I'm sure you and your student have a lot of questions about how it all works. Megan Sanbury is joining us today from the Advising Center to give you an overview of the process and the available resources to your students. After, there will be some time for some questions. We'll be utilizing that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you don't mind holding your questions until after the presentation, if your question wasn't answered, that's the time to go ahead and pop it into the chat. Just a reminder that if you're unable to stay for the entire webinar, it will be recorded and posted online to our website and our YouTube channel. Megan, you're welcome to go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Taylor. And thanks everybody for taking the time out today to join me for this discussion. Also, if you're watching it later and taking your time to do that as well, I appreciate it. So give me 1 second and I will share presentation here. Okay. So as Taylor mentioned, my name is Megan Sanbury. I'm the director of the Advising Center here with Arts and Sciences at William & Mary. And if you came to see me maybe at a Day for Admitted Students or Green and Gold Day, or even perhaps in the early advertisement for this webinar, you'll notice that we had a name change. We were formerly known as the Office for Undergraduate Academic Affairs, but we decided to kind of think that through and re-centralize for what our core mission is in advising, kind of simplify finding us and the work that we do. So everything has basically stayed the same. We're just making it a little bit easier for folks to find us with the Advising Center. So my office and the Advising Center is really what I like to consider sort of the central nervous system for academic advising for students. We have a faculty advisor model here at William & Mary, and so every student is paired with a faculty advisor, both in pre-major advising and then they choose their major advisor, who's also a faculty member within a department. And so our office helps facilitate that in a number of ways. Certainly with matching students is one of those pieces with their faculty advisor. And then we have a structure here that kind of helps students through their academic life here at William & Mary. So there are also professional advisors in my office. I'll talk a little bit about that. And really, we're a hub for connection to get them connected to planning and success resources. So today I want to, as Taylor mentioned, I'm sure is top of mind for some of you and your students, is talk through what this is going to look like over the next few months for your students as far as academic planning, advising, registration, and all of those pieces, parts for getting their schedule together in the coming weeks. And so, of course, then we'll talk a little bit about how you can help support that and the pieces that you can help with. And then, as Taylor mentioned, we'll have time for questions as well, because I'm sure you'll have them. So to get started, on Monday, the 23rd, College Studies will open for your students. So this is an online module, a short course that helps students prepare for both registration and academic expectations here at William & Mary. And so it's broken into two parts. Part one gets them prepared for registration by walking them through the liberal arts, the college curriculum. It helps them think about exploring interests, how that relates to potential majors. It walks them through the mechanics of a degree audit and what does transfer courses look like, or test credit, how to search for courses and register, and then making an academic plan. So that part one is a lot of good information. And this part will be required to register for courses before orientation. So you'll see in the Tribe Guide checklist, there are lots of due dates for things, and one of those will be part one for college studies that will take place in mid-July. Part two will bring students into the world of information literacy. So it goes through how to think about information, how to find and use information sources that are appropriate for college level work and work here at William & Mary. And obviously your students are experts on what's worked for them in the past. And so this course is going to help them start to make that transition to scholarly work at a university level versus maybe what they had been doing so far up until this point and get used to what that looks like at William & Mary. So part two will be done before, or we do before orientation starts. So we've kind of broken it up. Altogether, it should take around 5 to 7 hours to complete both part one and part two. So obviously they could do it in a day. I don't think I would suggest that. Probably wouldn't be the most fun day to spend kind of buried in all that information. They want to give themselves time to kind of digest and work through those each part. There are quizzes involved. There's assignments that they'll need to submit. And luckily, they don't have to do that all by themselves. So they will have a peer advisor. So that's typically an upperclassman who's been trained and supported through our office to help work with students through college studies and give them feedback on their planning, what things work for them as a student, what things maybe they could do differently, helping to interpret that information for them. And so those peer advisors will be there to support them in the summer months as they work through both part one and part two. So as I mentioned, we do have a faculty advisor model, and so those peer advisors will come in during these summer months, and then they will be matched with their pre-major advisor. And so hopefully your student has completed their student questionnaire, their new student inventory. That is where we gather that data that helps us understand kind of their big picture plans and what their major interests might be, and helps us work through that matching process over the next few months to get them set up with a faculty advisor for orientation. So we've structured this so they have a couple different checkpoints throughout their time, coming into William and Mary in their first semester. And so the first, they'll work through college studies, they'll absorb information, they'll work with that peer advisor. Our office is also offering open hours as well as part of that. And I can drop a link in at the end, or certainly I know that Taylor can send you some things after. So we have some open hours that students can drop in on Zoom over the summer to kind of check in with the advising team here. But they will also have the ability then to work with their pre-major advisor during orientation. So they will do some registration over the summer period, and we'll talk about that structure in just a minute. And then they will meet with their pre-major advisor during orientation so they can make other adjustments to their schedule. And then they'll work with their pre-major advisor until they declare their major. So they are matched initially, and then for their major advisor, they get to choose. And so sometimes that means they choose the same pre-major advisor, that it really clicks for them. And sometimes that means that they choose something different. They choose a different somebody they took a class for, or somebody who has a research interest. So they kind of get to develop what that looks like, what kind of support they're looking for in a major advisor. They make that ask. It's kind of a first step into kind of networking and building those relationships with folks. And then they would work with that major advisor all the way through graduation. And so to dovetail all of that, like I mentioned, there are professional advisors in my office that work with students really at any point of their journey. So largely as they're coming in, we're certainly here to help support them on their way in through college studies. And then as they get started here, you'll see us at orientation doing various presentations for you and for your students. But certainly our office is here as a resource throughout their entire time. So we're here to help supplement and answer maybe more in-depth questions about policy or just general planning, to help them work through maybe a petition process at some point, anything like that. We're here to help support that through professional advising in this office as well. That's all the support they get. Now let's think about the nuts and bolts of what they're looking at as far as planning and registration and coursework, and what is college studies really going to kind of walk them through. So one of those big parts that college studies is going to help them understand is the college curriculum. So this is what you all would probably consider a general education requirement for students. That's what we call the college curriculum. And it's built to be completed over their whole time here at William and Mary. So it's not like they're going to get all their gen eds out of the way, early on and move on to their major. It's really built to kind of weave all the way through those pieces. And the faculty have structured this program so that it's a range of courses that helps them gain experience and skills and really shapes them as independent thinkers and leaders and kind of gives them that freedom to explore. That's something that we really embrace and appreciate as a liberal arts institution, is that idea of exploration and trying different things and really expanding those possibilities. So each COLL curriculum requirement has its own set of skills. So I'll walk you through this really briefly. And again, you'll hear this multiple times over your time here at William & Mary, and you may have heard it at some point already. So I will do a quick kind of overview to give you a feel of what that is like and help you think about that when you're supporting your students and kind of their planning as they go forward. So the COLL 100s and 150s are small first-year seminar courses. So those are required in the first 3 semesters. Because they're small, they can be, they need lots of options because they're typically around, 20 students or so in each section, and there's lots of different options. And so walking them through kind of first, second choice, kind of ranking things in that way is helpful. But those are typically built as foundational communication courses that happen in your first 3 semesters. And so those, like I said, help build skills in communication. That's both in writing and then also in another form of communication. So COLL 150 is writing. COLL 100 is going to be any other form that's not writing of communication. So it's going to help them build those foundational skills in research and communication and building a project. Call 200s encourage students to see commonalities and differences among disciplines. So again, you don't have to take the 100s before you take 200s and 300s. Some of these will mix together. So they're not sequential in that way, but they do build on each other. And probably the only ones that sort of bookend are going to be the call 150 and 100, and then the call 400 on the other end. We'll talk about that in a second. So 200s, there's a range of those they can take across disciplines, and they're going to cross over multiple disciplines and really help them look at things in different ways. Call 300 and 350 are looking at differing perspectives. So it's both globally, that's your 300, and that could be study abroad. That could be a course here on campus. There are DC courses from our DC um, office that also cover those requirements. So that's global. And then looking at difference, equity, and justice within the US, and that's your 350. And again, there's multiple courses and ways that you can accomplish those pieces. And then your 400 is their capstones. That's the culmination of all of these things that they've done really between their major courses, the COLL curriculum, all those pieces come together where they do their own research and presentation that is their own for their major, and that's their COLL 400. So you can see in this graphic, the idea is kind of it builds all the way up through. And then in addition to those, COLL, call pieces, there's also proficiencies in math, arts, and language, and then additional knowledge domain requirements that kind of overlap and just give them you know, a breadth of courses that they can choose from and take. You do not have to remember all of this. Certainly you can reference this video again if you'd like to. It's all outlined on our website as well. You'll hear it again in orientation, so will your students, but this is the foundational work that they're going to do as part of college studies, because they're also doing that work to understand how they're going to build their first semester schedule. So the other part of part one in college studies is really thinking about, okay, here are all these components. I may be bringing in AP, IB transfer credits. Maybe I've got some dual enrollment that comes in and meets some of these requirements. It'll go through what kinds of things meet what requirements, because certainly that's something that's important, right? Like, how do all these things I've already done apply to what I'm going to do? Um, so that's one part of it. They'll walk through transfer credits and pre-matriculation credits as they come in. So you'll look at that, you'll look at how that fits as they're exploring things, what kind of majors maybe they want to explore. That'll be part of college studies part one. And then all of that will kind of culminate in this idea of building a first semester schedule. So we're taking different components and major exploration, call curriculum, and then we've kind of built a rough guide to help give some structure to what might be something that's a little bit more ambiguous than usual. And I know that most students are coming in where they have a much more structured, here are the things you're going to take, so take those. And might be a big shift for them in understanding how they get sort of the freedom to choose a lot of these pieces. And so that is one of our big things, is to help students kind of get into that world, understand it, and give them some structure like this that helps them understand how those pieces come together. What kinds of things am I looking for? And how do I build that into a first semester schedule? And the good news is, with the liberal arts curriculum, you're really looking to kind of use, the first few semesters as some exploration. You're going to get some requirements done. You're going to explore some major opportunities, some minor opportunities. Maybe you're considering pre-med or pre-professional option. We have pre-professional advisors as well. So there are faculty that focus on pre-health areas, pre-med, law, engineering, business, education, things that have maybe more specific requirements towards an end profession. So all those pieces exist for support as well. So helping them think through some of that. And then they'll use this guide as a way to think of courses that fit into each one of these buckets and fills out their semester, which will be around 12 to 15 credits. So students have to be at 12 credits to be at full time. But typically, I would say in the first semester, somewhere around 12 to 15 is a good place to aim. They can certainly, once we'll talk about the mechanics exactly of when they can do how many, at the beginning of the semester, they could go up to 18. I don't know if I would necessarily suggest that in their first semester while they're getting used to just being in college and being somewhere new. So certainly aiming for 12 to 15 for a full semester in their first semester here is great. And the idea is this would help them walk through. They'll create a semester schedule, they'll submit that for their peer advisor to review, and the peer advisor will give them feedback on, tips and tricks that they, look at, or like, ooh, you've got a heavy course load in sciences, like maybe you want to think about balancing this out. So that's their first kind of exposure to getting some feedback about their schedule. And then certainly their pre-major advisor will also walk them through some of those pieces as well. So the idea is, this is really in the summer, is their moment to step into practicing some of these pieces, getting used to things. and the stakes aren't quite as stressful as, like in a semester trying to schedule for classes. So the goal is really like we're helping them get their feet wet in building a schedule. What does that look like? How do I find courses that fit? What does registration look like? And this summer process is really meant to kind of walk them through those pieces and give them the guidelines to do that. So now summer registration, what does that look like? So we have a cart building system here on campus. So they'll have multiple ways in which they'll be registering for courses by both building a cart and doing like a live registration where they're actually adding and dropping courses in real time. So again, in the summer, the intent is to have them practice this. Um, so the idea is that they will do this process many, many a time here, and they'll do it every semester they're here. And the summer allows them to kind of, get into the process and see how that works. And then there's multiple checkpoints and places to make changes. So cart building happens July 16th through 23rd. And so oftentimes one of the questions I get from students and families is like, oh, we're traveling, and that, maybe we're not going to be right at a computer for the entire week of July 16th through 23rd. What do we do? The nice thing about cart building is they have that whole time to put things into their cart. So they're going to search for courses. They work through planning, they come up with some ideas, they'll walk through the course search process in college studies so they know how to look them up and what they're looking for. And then they're going to put things in a cart. So they're going to put a whole lot of credits in their cart. We expect that. So the nice thing again is that you're looking to give options. And so you're going to put a lot of courses in the cart. I think it's up to 30 credits almost. It's not going to register them for that many. We'll put the structure on the other side, but they're going to put a lot of courses in that cart. And the nice is you can do it anytime between the 16th and the 23rd. So if you can just get internet access for an hour and you can hop on and dump some courses in a cart that you've, prepped for on your way up to this point, that is perfectly fine. So it could be on the 23rd, as long as you do it before noon Eastern time. Then you'll be totally fine. So this does give some flexibility, whereas, in the years past, we've done like a timed registration for students in the summer. And so if you couldn't log on right at 8 a.m. Eastern time on a certain day, you kind of missed that moment. This will give you some more flexibility. And this is the process they're going to do every semester that they're here for registration. So they will build a cart. That means that they're putting, like I said, they're going to search for courses. They're going to put courses in a primary cart. And again, you're giving options. So you want to look for seat availability, what things look like, preferences, and then they'll rank them. And there's a couple different ways that you can rank courses in a cart. You can rank them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. You can also have it auto prioritize for you, and we can talk a little bit about that in a second. You can also rank alternatives. It is a complex thing to explain verbally. So luckily, the registrar's office has lots of great resources for students. And again, college studies is meant to walk them through those pieces so that they fully understand kind of what they're working with in this first round of registration. So auto prioritizing might be what most incoming students will use because they have, oh, thank you, Taylor. I appreciate the links in the chat. Auto prioritization might be what they want to use incoming because they've got lots of options and a little bit more flexibility in their schedule and what they can take in these first 2 years. Certainly, as you get higher and you have more specific requirements you have to meet, more limited options, and then it's going to look different. And the good news is we've got, again, lots of resources and we understand that, so we're going to help students as they move through this process in the years that they're here. So what auto prioritizing means is that in this next step, so you're going to complete the cart July 16th through the 23rd. 23rd cart's closed. And then what happens is on the back side is that registration happens. So after carts have closed, there are rounds of registration where the system is looking at where there are open seats and what students have selected and putting them in courses based on availability. And there's a snake draft analogy that the registrar's office uses that I will probably not do justice to. So if you are interested in how that works, again, if you go to the registrar's website, they will, there's a whole demonstration on how the registration process works. Basically, students are cycled through and it's looked at what they've ranked. And auto prioritize means rank any of these courses in this cart for where there are open seats. So find me a course that has an open seat and put me in it. So again, wide availability. That's kind of the name of the game for putting things into a cart. So that's going to happen all behind the scenes. So all students have to do is put courses in their cart that they're interested in and would be willing to take. And then on July 28th, they will have a schedule. So the good news is cart building gives you a little bit lower leeway, and maybe the little part that's going to be a little bit harder is there is a little bit of wait time between when they build their cart and it closes, and then when they get their schedule back on the 28th. And that's because what this allows us to do is kind of look at what the demand is, make any adjustments where we can, and try and get more students and more seats available for students if possible. It's a pretty short window. It's not always such a quick process, but it does allow us to kind of look at that data, run the optimization essentially a few times to try and get students, the best schedule that we can, the best amount of credits that we can. In this round, so students who are first time in college or probably class of 2029 are going to register for up to 11 credits. And really the name of the game in this round, because it's so early on, is like 2 or 3 classes registered in this round is absolutely the expectation. So I know it feels a little stressful because you're going to come into orientation, you're going to need to make adjustments, but that is totally expected. We've got a structure in place to help you navigate that. And that will be kind of in phases. So most first time in college students, all of those class of 2029 will be up to 11 credits. Um, and so you'll see that's not quite full time yet. I'll talk about that in a second. And then transfer students can register for up to full time, up to 16. But again, it might be 2 or 3 classes in this round, and that is totally fine. And part of that is because the add drop period comes after that. So you might get your schedule back, get a few courses, and then you can make changes. So now you get to practice the add drop method. It's all still through Path, but it is in real time. So that means I'm going to go find a class and I want to add it. So I'm going to add it and it'll show up on my schedule. So no more cart building after that. So July 29th through August 3rd, they get the ability to get their schedule back. They can chat with their peer advisor a little bit if they're available, um, and then July 29th through August 3rd is when they can make changes. So if they want to swap something, they see their seats in something that they want to change it to, they can do that. And again, that's all real time. So they can build again up to 11 credits. And the reason that is not quite full time yet is because they will meet with their advisor during orientation. So what we want to do is put some checks in so they can't get too far along, that there's seats for people, that we can kind of navigate all those processes, get some practice in, and then they will meet with their advisor on Monday, August 25th of orientation. And that's our opportunity to kind of see the schedule that they've got, that they've built from the summer, what they've been registered for, talk things over, make any changes, take any suggestions. And then their final round of registration as new students will be on Tuesday, August 26th. And that's when they can go up to 16 credits. They can get a full schedule then, finish off their schedule, add anything they need to, add drop courses, make changes. Again, like that process then starts for all students on that same day. And then they will be able to do an add drop period all the way through September 8th. So all students do. That's that final add drop period for all students. It happens at the start of every semester. So the goal is they will do a little bit of registration, they will understand the process, work through that, talk with a peer advisor, they'll have their advisor meeting, they'll do some more registration, and then they're going to be good to go. Understanding it can be stressful, that whole process, and probably have lots of questions. This is where you can come in to help. So reminding your students that the goal is to get a foundation and to understand the resources they can work from, to get solid practice and registration, and that they don't have to have it all figured out this summer. So a lot of students are going to come in with a lot of, solid ideas on what they want to do and how they want to build their schedule and what they want to explore, and also encouraging them to be open to the possibilities of courses and things that they might not have considered for themselves. That is all part of the William & Mary and the liberal arts experience. We hope that students are doing that. That is the goal of the college curriculum, and kind of how we built things is to help them really embrace that piece. So helping us reinforce that for students is really helpful, helping them to kind of take this as a process and a learning process, and to let them know if they have questions, just ask. It's totally fine. Better to ask the question than to feel like they are really on their own. We're here to help with those pieces. And like I mentioned, and thank you again, Taylor, for dropping that in the chat. We have drop-in hours. Once they're here on campus, again, we'll see them during orientation a few times, certainly. And then, we're available here as an office once things really get kicked off in the semester, where they can make appointments and come talk to us here if they need that. And then they'll work with their pre-major advisor. They have 3 required meetings with them in their first year. So around registration every semester, they will meet with their pre-major advisor and talk through their schedule and make sure they're set for the next, planning period. And certainly they can work with their advisors at any point. So that's not restricted to that, but they are required to at least do that. So they've got some, again, structure in place. There's some guardrails there. We got some checkpoints, some places where they can, have somebody to check in with. And that's just a reminder, there's lots of resources on campus that help students with their academics. And you all have lots of wisdom to share with your students. There's lots of informal advising that happens on campus outside the normal structure. And certainly they can utilize any of these resources, which I know will be part of these webinars as well, I'm sure at some point with career options. There's lots of good exploration options for students who are undecided. We've got a lot of good resources about one that's just sort of basically called "What do I do with this major?" What kind of options are there. There's also some interest inventory students can do, lots of things students can do to help them. For those that are really more undecided, obviously then there's just like skill building with the Writing Communication Center, certainly tutoring, coaching, and skills in that, time management, things like that, those pieces. And then obviously the registrar's office is also available to help support students as well. So again, they're going to get a lot of information and they can't be expected, as we all are, to really remember everything all the time. And so, just remember that we're here. We're here to help them. And if it's not our office that does it, we're always happy to, support students in navigating to what that next office is. So that was a lot of information. I see there's some questions in the Q&A, so I'm happy to take questions and certainly ask or answer some more specific things if that would be helpful.
Yes, thank you, Megan. I know every college does things a little bit differently, so
Yeah,
this is super helpful to know. We
of
do
course.
have some questions in the chat. Give me a minute as I
Great.
go through them. One of our questions is, how are services here at William & Mary set up for joint degree program students? Is there separate advising? When are they set up with a major advisor?
Yes, so the joint degree program with St. Andrews operates just slightly differently than students who are, solely William and Mary students, either transfer or new students. That program will be assigned your major advisor as part of that program because it's so specific in its requirements. That are a combination of the COLL and then other joint degree program requirements. They will be assigned their advisor in the summertime. And then there's a program office that helps support that. They also have college studies, so there is a college studies that joint degree program students will do, and that will help them walk through some of the more specifics in that program that they'll need. But they will get communication from the joint degree program office as well to support them in just the really specifics of that program. Same with scholars programs. Your students may be a Monroe Scholar, WM Sure Scholar, a posse, there's lots of variations kinds of in scholars programs. And if they have special things for their scholars program, they will also get that communication from them. Again, everybody's going to do a college studies version. But they will also get specialized information for each one of those things that they're participating in from those particular offices as well. So you'll get, I know it's so much information, you'll get lots of communication from folks, which is great. Also encouraging students to check their email, super helpful if you can help us navigate that as well. So yes, joint degree program folks will get some specialized advising for their program specifically. Yeah.
This next question, how do students prep for a course like books or any software they need if they don't
Yeah.
select a class until August 26th?
I will say the expectation in that first add drop period is that things are fluctuating. So faculty are well aware that within those first 2 weeks, or a week and a half, because I don't know exactly where the eighth falls in the beginning of the semester, but certainly within those first weeks of a semester, there is an understanding that there may take some time for resources, and most faculty have kind of anticipated that as part of their syllabus because things can change, students add, they drop. Certainly encourage students not to wait until the end of add drop to add something, especially if you haven't been attending that class. That can make it really difficult to plan, but certainly within by like on the 26th, like that's understandable. Faculty know that all of that information is on the course listing and path. But they'll be able to work through that. That's kind of something that we know exists on campus. So that's totally workable. It's a good question.
If a student already has a desired major, should they look at requirements for that major now or wait until after semester one is done?
No, that's a good question. So it doesn't hurt to look at the requirements now. You'll see on that one slide, there is a first semester advising website that we've created that's specifically for looking at, okay, I'm interested in anthropology. What are some introductory courses that I might want to take? Nice, Taylor, you're on it. I'm impressed.
Doing
Okay.
my little
Yeah,
searching behind the scenes.
excellent. Good. It's right in the chat. So that walks you through like, okay, like I said, I'm interested in anthropology. What are some intro courses I could take? That would be really helpful if they're kind of exploring. If you, like you said, they're already decided, certainly the course catalog or the department's website is helpful. There are variations of planning guides that can help students. What I would say is it does not hurt to look at that. It is not imperative that things are exactly, like it's not a what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want them to stress over the idea of like, I have this perfect plan starting this first semester for this major I want to do. Again, our curriculum is built to be flexible and to support that exploration. And so never hurts to look at things early and kind of get a feel for what you need. And certainly if you're interested in something like business that has an application process, helpful to look at that to kind of understand what are the prerequisites maybe I need to do before I apply or whatever that looks like. But again, you have some flexibility in your first semester, so working through that within your first few semesters is absolutely fine. And again, that's what, advisors are here to help you think through after you get some of this registration in the summer.
Right. How many credits are a typical William Mary class?
Oh, great question. So I would say most classes are 3 credits. The Call 100 and 150 are going to be 4 credits. Certainly, if you're going to take like a science and a lab, like together, those would be 4 credits. I would say you're looking at anywhere typically around 3, sometimes 4. There are also wellness classes that I super encourage students to look at if they can, that are 1 credit classes that support things like sound wellness and yoga. There are some pieces in there that are nice to build into a schedule to kind of give some variety. But I would say the vast majority are probably 3 credits, and then you've got a variation from there between 1, 2, and 4. But that's typically 4 is the most you're going to get.
On the same lines, what is the total number of credits to graduate? What should they be working toward?
Yes, absolutely. 120 credits. So 120 credits is the total that you need. And certainly if students are coming in with transfer credits, those count towards your 120. And so if you didn't come in with anything, which is possible, that you would do 15 essentially credits every semester to get to your 120. And then oftentimes, if people want to, students want to ease in a little bit, maybe take 12 in your first semester, or they withdraw from something, or they drop something, to end up right at that 12. Obviously, we have opportunities. A lot of students, I mean, a good portion of our students do study abroad. There's DC programs, there's summer courses, there's some winter courses that students can do. Like there are opportunities then to kind of build out to that 120 if you need to. But certainly if you're transferring or bringing in pre-matriculation credit, that counts towards your 120 overall. You have to get at least 60 credits here. So you have to get at least half of your degree in both your major and your overall credits here at William and Mary, but then there's some flexibility in taking a transfer course or something like that and bringing that in as well. So 120 overall, at least 60 here.
All right, we've got a couple questions about AP courses.
Yeah.
How does William Mary get their AP scores? How
Yeah.
do they make sure that a class is taken care of?
Yes.
Yes, can they fulfill requirements in the first semester based on those AP scores?
Yes. So there are various places that AP and like basically what's pre-matriculation. So it could be IB, AP, could be if you were taking dual enrollment credits. Those could also transfer, and typically those can count for things like proficiencies or knowledge domains. Again, that may not mean anything to you in this moment, but as your student walks through college studies, you can kind of see how all that breaks down, and that typically those transfer courses can count in those places. And so as they're walking through that, they will see as things come in, and it might take some time. It may not be over the summer, and in fact, College Board where those AP test scores come from, typically don't send them to us until I want to say it's like mid to late July that it comes through. So it may take some patience waiting for things as they come in. But again, college studies will walk them through what counts, what can count for where, like what meets what requirements. And then you would send anything. So if it's College Board, you would send those College Board test scores here. So you do have to initiate it through College Board to send them to us. If they have dual enrollment credits, it typically, it, well, you might want to double check. I know that eventually you have to send them from the crediting institution. So the community college or whatever is giving you those credits needs to come here to us. Any final transcripts, anything needs to be initiated and sent to us, and then it's reviewed by the registrar's office. And that is, it's a person who's processing those, and she gets a lot over the summer, and so it can take a little bit of time. But again, the peer advisors can kind of help you through that process as well, and college studies well, and thinking through how do I build around that while I'm waiting for things to come in that might meet some of these requirements. So you don't have to figure it out on your student doesn't have to figure it out all by themselves. But yes, most of those things have to be initiated to be sent to here to make sure that we get them.
Great. Okay, I'm seeing a few questions about cart building. When does cart building for their spring semester starts? And is there summer cart building every year, or is it only for new students?
Ooh, those are great questions. Summer, I'll start with the easier one, maybe. Yeah, they're both kind of easy. Summer cart building will only happen for incoming students. So they will not be registering for courses in the summer, again, unless they're registering for summer courses. So this big registration really is just for incoming students. Um, then once they're here and they're matriculated, they will register for the spring, probably around November, I would say it's typically, around that time frame. So yes, they will build carts again. So they'll do again this whole process, same thing. It'll be about a week. They'll build a cart, they'll prioritize, they'll have practiced this already once, and they will continue to do that process. They will get a schedule back, and then there'll be an add drop period. So that will happen every semester, and it's typically I would say it's around March in the spring for the fall, and then it happens in November typically for the fall to the spring. So yeah, they won't do this in the summer again unless we're specifically registering for summer courses. Same if they're taking like a winter like DC program or something like that, they would register for that in the fall time. And have that schedule available to them. So yes, the summer process is really only for incoming students. And I would say too, if you're looking at the schedule, as I know that you all are go-getters and your students are, is that you might see that it looks pretty full at the moment, and that's because we're holding seats for incoming students. And so continuing students are still making adjustments to their schedule, and then we will open different seats or more seats, look depending for incoming students. So don't panic if you're looking at it and it looks a little sparse out there right now. We'll make adjustments when incoming students come through.
Let's see. We're asking about the additional requirements beyond the call courses. So a math, a language, art. How does that work?
Yes, so there are three proficiencies that students will need to meet as part of their again the college curriculum on the whole. Um, and so there's language proficiency, so they would need to take up to the 200 or excuse me 202 or 203 level, depending on each language kind of offers them slightly differently. But they would need to take up to that proficiency here at William Mary. If they've taken 4 years in high school, that will meet that proficiency coming in. There are various ways to meet that requirement. So that's one, if you've got questions, certainly going in college studies and using those resources will help because it's kind of a like, where do I start? Process. And there are ways to kind of take placement exams. If let's say you've taken 3 years in high school, so you don't quite meet the proficiency here yet, but you want to test into an upper level, there's that possibility. So there's lots of different pathways that you can get a foreign language proficiency done. Math proficiency is typically a statistics or a calculus class. So there's one course, one math class that you would need to take. Again, you could have transfer credit or something that comes in that takes care of that course for you, or you can take something here. And then your arts proficiency is a performing arts proficiency, so that can vary. Students take lessons, they take art courses. There are again various ways to do that, and you can certainly again transfer APIB credit can potentially satisfy that as well. So there are various different ways to do that piece, and that can be satisfied here or perhaps before you come in as well.
Are any spots reserved for transfer students, especially those coming in as sophomores or juniors? How do they get the classes that they'll need?
So behind the scenes, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked because I think I didn't mention that when we were talking about kind of how registration works. So behind the scenes, or if you've experienced college registration before, and certainly in years past here before we switched to the system, students would go in and you have a time and a day based on your priorities. So let's say we wanted to prioritize transfer students, that meant they would go in at 8 a.m. and then everybody else would go in at 9, and it would kind of trickle through live registration. The nice thing about this is everybody builds a card at the same time, but then the backside students are prioritized. And so we prioritize transfer students first. So transfer students run through that registration process first, and then we move on to first time in college students. And so there's a prioritization that happens behind the scenes that kinds of shuffle people in depending on various. So like if you've got accommodations for registration, then you would also shuffle differently in the prioritization. Just kind of depends. But that all happens on the other side so that you all don't have to try and figure out when you're supposed to do something and your students don't either. So we take care of that on the other side. So that's one of the ways that we help support transfer students to get what may be kind of a more restricted kind of options for courses.
Just a quick question. Is the fall course catalog available for students to browse now, even though they won't be doing anything with it?
Yeah, yep. You can go to registration.wm.edu and you can see the courses. But just keep in mind, like I mentioned, that landscape might look different as we get closer to incoming student registration. But certainly you can start to get in there, and there's all kinds of filters and things you can use. If you only want to look for Call 100 courses that have open seats, you can filter by that. If you really want to try and find history courses, you can filter on that. There are lots of different ways that they'll play with over the summer period. But yeah, you can get in there now if you want to. Just don't panic if you see that there's a couple seats may be listed for a call 100 or 150. We do that intentionally. So,
Right. Right. And then as a refresher, when does the final add drop period end?
yes, the final add period ends on September 8th. So it starts at the first day of, well, the day before classes start for all students, and then we'll end. But always reference the academic calendar. Again, if you can help students kind of get used to those pieces too, that's really helpful. That academic calendar, the final exam schedule, those are all pieces that exist for students to utilize, and they're really helpful information to sort of have awareness of, even if you're not going to engage with it immediately, to know that they're there, they exist, and they tell you all those important things like add drop timelines and things like that.
Um, More about a timeline. When
Yeah.
do they get assigned a pre-major advisor and the peer advisor?
So peer advisors, so for college studies that'll open on Monday, they will get an email that college studies is open. So I think I saw somebody maybe ask that question in there as
Hmm.
well. So they'll get a notification from Blackboard, which is the platform that they use for college studies. That's also the platform that the vast majority of courses are taught in. So again, it's that idea of practice. They get to go in and do college studies in Blackboard, get used to what that platform looks like. So it's something they're going to continue to use in their time here. So they will get an announcement from that will go to their email. And then their peer advisor will also reach out, within those first few days of college studies and reach out and say, "Hi, here I am. I'm available to help and answer your questions for you." And then they'll be assigned their pre-major advisor at the start of orientation. So we work through that whole matching process, in the coming weeks and months. Faculty are back on campus in like mid-August, I would say, and then they would get their advisor going in orientation, and then there's a whole reach out plan for them to do as part of orientation as well. So they'll know their pre-major advisor at the start of orientation. And then typically, I would say their pre-major advisor should reach out to them the Friday of orientation to set up meetings on Monday. So there's a whole system in place there too to get y'all connected.
This is a question about the 2 rounds of signing up for classes.
Yeah.
If they can only pick up to 11 credits in the first round, how many do you recommend putting in their carts in that first week?
Such a good question. And also reminds me of another thing. They will put in Boohoo credits in their cart. So I'd say if you're aiming for up to 11, and they can put up to 30 in their cart. So I would say aim for the max. Doesn't hurt. Again, the more options that you can give it to kind of pick from, the better opportunity you have to be registered for something that has an available seat. So it's no problem to put in a bunch of cart or a bunch of courses in your cart because we limit what you can do on the other side. The other piece that happens, this reminds me of two things. So thank you for that question. We for this first round, we will typically put a system in place where they can't register for their 100 and 150 in the same semester. Um, we don't recommend students doing that. They're 4 credit classes. They're a lot of, they're a lot of work, especially in their first semester, kind of getting into things, getting used to the academic rigor here. We don't really recommend taking those 2 courses in the same semester. So the idea is you spread them out, one each semester, and maybe one, your first semester or second and third, right? Like kind of spread them out that way. So we'll kind of put some systems in place to help support that. So they can put in a bunch of 100s and 150s, and that's fine. And we'll work through, putting some guardrails again on some of that on our side, and they just put in, as many options as possible so they can put in a bunch. The other thing it reminded me of as a plug is we will also offer open sessions with our office and advisors and the registrar's office during cart building in July. So again, you'll have opportunity, and that'll be announced in college studies for students. You'll have an opportunity to hop on Zoom. We have a variation of times and days that folks can join us to ask questions once they're really in there. Because sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you go in there to do it, and we totally understand that. So if they've got questions, then we'll also be available to kind of field open questions during that time as well, knowing that yes, you're going to get in there and you will have read all of these things and practice all this stuff, and then it might be, more questions from there, which is totally fine. So be on the lookout for those as well.
Okay, glad you mentioned college studies because someone asked, where can my student find the link for the first part of college studies once it opens on Monday?
So if you go on your Tribe Guide checklist and you're working through that, there is a link for college studies. It's all one course. So part one and part two are housed in the same course. It will take you right to your Blackboard. You could also just go to blackboard.wm.edu and log in with your credentials, and you will see the course. You may even see the course in there now. It's just not open yet. So like all the students are in the course. It's just not available quite yet for you to engage in. So you may actually, if you went to Blackboard or your students do, and log in, you could see it there, and then it will open for them on Monday so they can get in there and do things. Also, as part of the STEP office, who provides lots and lots of wonderful structure and information for you all, they also have there's a web page where we've kind of linked out some structure from college studies as well. If you kind of want to get in there before Monday, if you're just feeling ready to go, you can certainly link to some of those things as well.
This is a great question. Do the call course topics change from semester to semester? So if they don't love the options in the first semester, will they have a second round in the second semester?
That is a really good question. So one of the nice things um, about the call curriculum and kind of how it's built is that it goes across disciplines. And so yes, absolutely. Um, it will vary from semester to semester. So what I would say is, again, be open-minded. That's always really helpful for students to consider things, and maybe it's more options. So sticking, like, if you only really want one call 100, like the chances of getting something that's smaller is just harder. So having, a couple of options, a couple things to do, but certainly if like basically nothing feels like it's the right fit in this semester, then yeah, it will probably switch up topics. Call 200s will vary, call 300s and 350s will vary again. Each semester, different disciplines offer different variations. Some are offered continuously every semester, and some will pop in, or we also have topics courses in departments where sometimes it's just like a special topic a professor wants to teach. And so it's one semester, and it happens for students as well. So yes, the short answer to that long explanation is yes, they will have options, but also, help them work through, like, don't wait too long. Sometimes if they wait on something, then they may not, it may just get harder, for some of those things, some of those smaller
Right.
classes. So it's a
I
combination.
also
So
think it's helpful in your call 100 and 150 to maybe take a class in a subject that you've never taken before or something to kind of
yeah,
like branch out your realm, especially if you come in already with a sort of major and vise in mind, then it might be a good idea to branch out and maybe take the class where the title doesn't sound that interesting to you, but who knows, it could be a minor that you end up with. So
yes,
definitely
100%.
encourage that branching out.
Yes, thank you, Taylor. I mean, that's really the goal of the call curriculum in a lot of ways, is to
Yeah.
encourage you to do that because it will meet a requirement for you and help you get some exploration. And I think you're right. It's a good point. A lot of times students feel like, oh, I want to do chemistry, so I have to do a Chem 100. But
Yeah.
really, don't do that. Like, go find something else. I mean, sometimes that's nice, but it's not a requirement. You don't have to do your 100s and 150s in your major of choice. Like
Yeah.
Taylor said, it's a good way to try things out.
Yeah. Okay, a little bit more of a specific question. My son is a sharp scholar and has already submitted a priority list of
Oh,
call classes. Does he
yep.
put those priority classes in his carts or will they already be there?
So there are some scholarship programs, so Sharp and Monroe. There are some options for Call 100, 150 that I'm sure you've heard about from your obviously, since you've done it, it's just good. That particular program, those courses will be there. You don't have to anticipate those as part of your cart building process. That's something that will be taken care of for you through the program itself. So yes, it doesn't hurt. You should have those in place. I think the idea is to have those during cart building so that you can see what you have. But if that doesn't happen, certainly if you want to throw a couple alternatives in there, it doesn't hurt, but you will have those already. So you don't need to account for them necessarily in your plan. Or I mean, not, I mean, account for them in your plan, don't account for them in your cart.
Yeah. Okay. Is it typical to do a call 150 first and then a 100 later? Does the order matter?
It does not. So a call 100 is looking at research and communication in a I mean, research is sort of standard, but communication in a non-writing way. So it's a project that's like a podcast or some sort of presentation. And then a 150 is going to be a writing, right? So it's going to be a paper. It's going to be research and a paper. So it doesn't matter what order you do them in, they're going to give you a foundational skill. And so maybe in your first semester, if you know that writing is really like your jam, like your student is really good at writing and that's a comfort place for them, maybe starting there wouldn't hurt, right? Like something where they feel a little bit confident in, but it doesn't matter. So like really whatever sparks their interest and feels like the right fit for them is totally fine.
Okay. Right. Another credits question. This might differ between them, but is there like a general range of credits that it takes to get a minor as opposed to another major?
Oh yeah, no, great question. So a minor is typically around 18 to 21 credits. And so oftentimes I will say at William & Mary, students find their way into a minor because of this exploration process. So like maybe they have taken a core number of classes in a particular discipline, but then go someplace else. They're kind of working parallel pathways, maybe exploring a couple major options, and then they find that they have enough credits with a few more classes to take a minor. So yeah, minors are typically anywhere between 18 to 21 credits, generally speaking.
Okay, jumping around back to peer advisors.
Yep.
Is the peer advisor matching up? Is that student specific or is it just whoever is available and they'll match up and work with your student?
So we basically give peer advisors a group of students. So those are pre-assigned. So each peer advisor probably has around 20 to 25 students. And so their goal is really to kind of, coach them through college studies, answer questions. They will grade their assignments. They'll grade, there's two assignments in college studies that students will submit. One, it's a practice email to your advisor. So they can get practice in writing what does an email like that to a faculty member look like. And then the second piece is that plan. So the peer advisor will look at those assignments. So they're assigned to students already in groups, and then they know who they're reaching out to and kind of who they're working with. So they should have one peer advisor typically that will work with them. Now, humans are humans and students are students, and so sometimes we make some switches, but we have that all in place to kind of make sure that that's a continuous level of support for students all through the summer. So that's the plan. Is one peer advisor will help you through the whole thing, help students through the whole thing.
And those peer advisors will reach out to the students, correct? Okay,
Yes,
right.
and if for some reason you don't hear from your peer advisor, because again, sometimes things happen for folks, then you certainly can reach out to our office at advising@wm.edu, and then we can make that connection for you as well. So if you feel like you haven't heard from them by like midweek next week for some reason, like you really haven't heard, maybe by the end of next week at the latest, then just go ahead and shoot us an email. We're happy to make sure that things are all in place and get you connected. That's no problem. But you should hear from them, within the start of next week.
Okay, can they have a double major and a minor? Can they have a major and two minors?
So you can have a major. You need a major to graduate, 100%. That you definitely need that. You can have two majors. You can have a double major and a major and a minor. We have looked at the possibility of thinking about, eventually down the line, maybe what it would look like to have a major and two minors. Certainly, if that's something you're exploring, like come and talk to us about that. But really, technically, you can have two majors or a major and a minor. Now, does that mean you couldn't do the coursework that maybe completes another minor? It's possible students do it. There are ways, and you would work certainly with us. We're happy to kind of help you think through that. And obviously, then the Career Center as well can help you think through how do you frame something that you've done in a resume that isn't necessarily marked on your transcript. So, again, you get a diploma that says you get a Bachelor of Arts, a Bachelor of Science, a Bachelor of Business Administration, whatever that looks like. And then your transcript is more specific. And so, for those things that maybe we cannot transcript, how do you frame that in a way on a resume, on a cover letter, whatever that looks like, a grad school application that says, hey, I also did a concentration in gender studies, whatever that looks like for you. So there are lots of ways to kind of accomplish those things without the explicit transcript notification as well, because we do know that sometimes students, again, just happen to complete something in a core of classes that isn't necessarily transcripted specifically.
Okay, a little bit different here. If their student has already satisfied the language requirement in high school, can they still continue taking that language? And how do they
Yeah.
determine which level that they're at?
Yeah, 100%. So you can absolutely continue taking languages. I think it's a great opportunity. There are placement exams for most modern languages, and then some of the ancient languages you would work with folks in those departments. But the placement exam for modern languages, you can take those and it will give you an idea of then what level you can register for, and we'll make it so that you can register for that level. So just say if you have thank you, Taylor. So if you have if you have an interest in continuing a language, certainly there are lots of pathways to do that, and a placement exam could be one of those pieces that helps you kind of mitigate that. I will say the placement exam, if you want to take a placement either for continuing language or for completing your foreign language requirement in the summer, that's due pretty soon. It's due in early July. It's right after the holiday, I would say. I believe it's the 9th, but don't quote me on that because I don't have that date on the top of my brain, but it is in college studies. So I'm just saying as a general reminder for you and your student, if they do want to take a placement exam to see where they would place before this first registration round, then that deadline comes up pretty quick so that they can grade them and get them turned around. If you miss it, if your student misses it this time around, all that means is they can't necessarily do it in this round of registration to maybe register for an upper level course if they don't have the prerequisite for that just yet through the placement exam. So it just means that in this first round, if they don't have to take the placement, but they know they want to, maybe don't prioritize the language, you can take the placement exam at any time. It just means maybe they do that before ad drop and then they can make that adjustment during ad drop. So ideally, you would get it done early, but certainly, it's fine. If it doesn't, it just means that it won't be ready for you in this first round of registration. So just keep that in mind. If they really want to make sure they can register for it in this first round, then the exam comes up pretty quick in July.
Good to know.
Yeah.
All right, last question here. Can you do a double major in two different schools, like the business school and our new data science school? How does that work?
Yeah. So the great thing about William and Mary, and in my former time here, I started the business school, so I feel like I've had this conversation and still do with students. One of the really nice things about William and Mary is that you can do that. And so there are students who double major between what was arts and sciences and business, and now would be arts and sciences, the new CDSP school, and business, arts and sciences. And the new school, like there are multiple ways that you can combine those things, and that will be the same. So you could major and minor, you could double major. It just depends on kind of what you're interested in. But yes, you can absolutely do that between schools and between programs like that. Same with marine science, right? Like we have a new marine science major coming on board in the fall as
Right.
well. And so like that's again another opportunity to kind of cross multiple things and really build out something for yourself that is unique.
Okay, we do need to be wrapping up here. I still see some
Yeah.
questions left in the chat, but as Megan said, there are those open office hours for your student to join, and then you can always email advising@wm.edu for any questions that are still lingering.
Yes, happy to answer. And thank you all again for these great questions. It's always really helpful because you know what you need. And sometimes I can
Right.
wrap that all up in a presentation, and sometimes it really helps to be able to engage with you. Also, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah. Thank you guys. See you next time. Bye.
Okay, take care.